Hi guys and girls, I'm Obsidian Ant and welcome back to Star Citizen. Now, most massive online game worlds come with some form of punishment when players commit a crime within the game world. Star Citizen then is no exception to this, and as from update 3.9, which is due for release in the first quarter of this year, the game will feature a fully functional prison system. This week, CIG gave players another look into the Clasher Rehabilitation System, in short, the prison you'll be sent to in the event of getting killed when committing a crime. CIG's intent with the prison system is to create an entirely independent game loop that is separated from the rest of the game world. Here, players will be isolated and required to serve time before they are allowed entry back into the rest of the galaxy. Now, there's a number of ways to do this, which we'll get to in just a moment. Firstly though, it's worth pointing out that when in prison, players will lose access to all the items in their inventory, and these items will only be returned to the player when they are released after serving their time. And as far as I've been able to tell, CIG haven't yet been specific as to what happens with your inventory items in the event that you escape from the prison rather than choosing to serve your time. The prison system itself then is fully automated. And when first in the prison, players wake up in their cell with only their prison clothes and a mining tool. Once in prison, players will be able to participate in various activities which will allow players to earn merits, and these merits can then be used to purchase your freedom. The prison will also contain automated kiosks from which players can make a variety of purchases, and whilst there's not yet an extensive list of items, things such as tools and medical equipment were mentioned, not to mention food and water as well. Now, the layout of the prison appears to be very complete. CIG mentioned that the prison will contain 50 cells. The assumption I've got here, and based on this, would be that this means 50 players can also be in their prison. But that would just be an assumption at this point. However, it has been very clear that players will be placed together within prisons. The inside Star Citizen footage showed off some automated turrets which are apparently located near the cells, so I guess players had better behave in these areas. Moving downwards from the prison cells on the next floor, information kiosks can be found which contain the details on how much time the player has left to serve, and further down still are the mines, where players can participate in what would perhaps be classed as hard labour. That is, mining to repay your debt to society, or to put it another way, participating in free labour for the corporation Clasher, until they deem you've done enough work to be released. So fortunately for those who are adverse to hard work, the prison also comes complete with an escape route. How this works and whether or not it actually involves gameplay has yet to be revealed. However, during the recent CitizenCon, a work in progress of the escape was shown, and here players were able to effectively navigate their way out of the prison to eventually find a spaceship that would take them away from all their problems. How the escape system will ultimately work though has yet to be seen, and to be honest, this is likely to be a very tricky element of the prison mechanics. Make the escape route too easy after all, and players will simply run away from the prison as soon as they are placed there. But make it too difficult, or too boring perhaps, and players may instead find themselves unwilling to even attempt the escape. And that kind of brings me on to the entire prison system mechanics themselves. On the whole, it's actually a very good idea, but over the years, there's really very few games which have actually tried a prison system, and perhaps with good reason. One which comes to mind, albeit a simplistic one, is the Elder Scrolls games, although of course not online. They do come to mind though, but they are far removed from what CIG are attempting here. Now, whilst I'm most certainly intrigued by the idea of prisons in Star Citizen, that's not to say that the idea doesn't also come with a number of concerns. And really, perhaps one of the main ones here is just how often players are going to find themselves in prisons. On the one hand, the law and punishment system is being put in place so that players actually have more freedom. And on the face of it, that may sound somewhat contradictory, but as CIG themselves have pointed out, many online games out there, and single-player games to be honest, place artificial restrictions on the players. For example, the inability to draw weapons in certain locations, or even fire weapons or attack guards. There's many examples. And restrictions in general on how players approach a game is something that CIG really don't want to do, at least not in an artificial way. So instead, they pretty much want to allow players to do anything, and actually, instead of being restricted, they end up being punished instead. So that's where the prison systems come in. CIG's job here then will be to ensure that players feel they are fairly treated by the game mechanics. Would it be possible for other players to trick you, for example, or perhaps troll you into committing a crime, and there you end up in prison without really ever intending to in the first place? Or will players end up in prison for a minor crime that is easily done as an accident? For example, the accidental discharge of a weapon in restricted areas. So just how far do you have to go in order to end up in prison? And could other players take advantage of that fact and basically troll you or grief you into those sort of situations? So whilst the idea of a prison system in the game is certainly a very good one, it could also potentially turn frustrating very quickly if players wind up in prison for actions either beyond their control or otherwise easily committed as an accident. All that said, the law system is certainly something that is going to add another layer of interesting game mechanics to Star Citizens, so I'm actually looking forward to seeing how all this plays out when the update 3.9 arrives. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys and girls next time.